Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we've got excerpts from a novel called The Will of the Parthenon, and it's post-apocalyptic.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so we're kind of just thrown right into the action 7 years after some kind of war, and this mysterious, like, infection that has turned some humans into, like, these
Oh,
creatures
well, okay.
that they call rats.
Okay.
And we follow this young woman named Tina who's surviving in the ruins of what was once Columbus, Ohio.
Right. It's definitely bleak, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting how the author uses, Tina's scavenging
Right.
in this ruined grocery store, not just to, show her survival skills, but I think it's something more.
Yeah. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. I
Sure.
mean, she's, on edge the whole time, she's aware of the dangers, both from, these rats that they're talking about, but also other survivors too.
Right.
And even find of that full water bottle, it's like a small victory, but it really highlights how observant she is. I mean,
Right.
those are the kinds of details that keep you alive.
Yeah, but think about the water bottle itself. I mean, in a desolate world, like this water is more than just a physical need. It represents life and,
Yeah. Right.
purity, a chance for renewal, maybe even. So the author's choice to focus on that detail, I think, suggests a glimmer of hope amidst all this decay.
Yeah, that's a great point. It makes you see that detail in a whole new light. And then, of course, there's that, encounter with the injured girl
Right.
in the grocery
Oh,
store.
oh gosh. Yeah.
And it's, that's just a reminder of the brutal choices that people are forced to make.
Yeah, her refusal of help is more than just a plot device, though. I think it really, it raises the question of what does agency even mean when survival is always at stake?
Right.
And by choosing death in a way, she's taking control of her own fate.
Right. It's heartbreaking. And you can just see how deeply it affects Tina, too.
Yeah.
She already carries the weight of 7 years of loss and, loneliness, and now this, too.
And that brings us to Tina's internal struggles, which the author, I think portrays really vividly, like her habit of counting cracks in the ceiling. That's
Right.
more than just a quirk. I think it reveals her need for order, like a way to cope with the stress and the uncertainty.
Right. It's like she's trying to impose some kind of control
Exactly.
on a world that's, just completely gone haywire.
Yeah, and just when we think we're getting a handle on, Tina's world and this situation, this mysterious man appears.
Right out of nowhere.
Yeah, he saves her from the grocery store roof, too, in a way that seems kind of impossible. And then he offers her a better life, but doesn't really explain much about himself.
Yeah, he's like a phantom, just shrouded in secrecy. She
Yeah.
just like appears and disappears at will and leaves Tina and us as readers with more questions than answers.
Right.
And that location, he gives her a Circle K near the junction of highways 270 and 70.
Right.
It's not just a random, meeting spot. It's like a symbol of the past,
Yes.
of the world that was lost. And by drawing Tina towards this, location, the author is inviting us to consider like what it means to rebuild,
Right.
to reclaim some sense of normalcy
Exactly.
in a world that's been totally, changed.
And it makes you wonder if that better life he's offering is even possible.
Right.
Can you really go back to something resembling normal after you've been through, trauma like that?
It's a question that she grapples with, too. I mean, she's been alone for so long, trusting no one, and now she has to decide, does she embrace this chance or does she stick with, the devil she knows?
It's a tough choice.
Yeah, and her journey to that, rendezvous point is anything but, straightforward. I mean, the encounter with Travis and his partner who mistake her for someone named Sandra,
Oh, right. Yes.
it adds another layer of complexity to the story.
That mistaken identity is more than just a, plot twist, though. I think it really highlights the dangers of anonymity in this world where people are just reduced to their most basic instincts.
Right.
And it makes you think how much of our identity is tied to our name and our past and what happens when those things are taken away.
It's a chilling thought.
It is.
And that close call in the abandoned house and her escape across the river is just like this relentless series of challenges that, really test her.
But it's worth noting how the author uses those challenges to show more about Tina,
Right.
Like in that abandoned house, she doesn't just react, she thinks strategically and uses the environment to her advantage.
Right.
It shows how clever she is. And we didn't really know that about her at the beginning.
Yeah, it's like she's tapping into some primal instinct,
Right.
some survival mode.
Exactly. And then there's that encounter with Travis by the riverbank,
Right.
which adds a whole other, dimension to the story. His warning about Tommy hints that there's this larger power structure,
Right.
going on like a network of, alliances and stuff that we don't even know about.
It's clear that Tommy is someone to be feared,
Oh, yeah.
but we don't know anything about him.
Right? The author leaves us hanging,
Yeah.
wanting more. Who is this guy and what kind of power does he have?
Yeah, and then just when it seems like she might be able to, like, catch her breath, she's confronted by that jeep full of armed men.
Oh, gosh.
And her escape using fire is both, like, daring and disturbing.
It's a turning point for Tina, I think,
Yeah.
We see her cross a line. She uses violence, not just to defend herself, but to get rid of a possible threat. And you can't deny that's a complicated thing to do.
It raises the question, in a world gone mad, can you hold on to your humanity, or does survival require a certain level of ruthlessness?
Yeah, it's a question that the author doesn't shy away from at all.
Right.
And it's one that's going to stay with Tina, as she makes her way towards that Circle K and that uncertain future.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting how the author, weaves in these flashbacks to Tina's past.
Right.
We see her as this, normal kid dealing with school and family,
Yeah.
totally unaware of what's coming.
Right. Those glimpses of normalcy make the contrast with her present situation even more,
Yeah.
jarring. We're kind of,
Yeah.
experiencing that loss of that world right alongside her.
Yeah, and that flashback with President Adams, announcing the invasion.
Right.
It's so chilling. It's familiar.
Yeah, it echoes, our own anxieties about, global conflict and stuff.
Absolutely. But notice how the author uses simple, everyday details.
Right.
Like dinner with her family or a joke her dad tells to make that collapse of normalcy just hit even harder.
Yeah. It humanizes the apocalypse in a way.
Right.
It reminds us that it's not just explosions and monsters, it's about
Right.
the shattering of ordinary lives.
Yeah, and then there's her dad's job offer.
Right.
The possibility of creating these super soldiers.
Right. Creating weapons like that, even when facing
You could justify.
this existential threat. I mean, it's a question that resonates with our own time too.
Yeah, absolutely.
With, all the advancements in business technology and AI. And
It
stuff.
makes you think about the responsibility that comes with knowledge,
Right.
and the possible consequences of scientific progress.
And the tension between her parents,
Oh, yeah.
it's really palpable. You can just tell that they love each other, but this impossible situation is
Right.
just putting this huge strain on their relationship.
That mother's fear,
Right.
her just desperate need for her husband to just stay.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder of those emotional bonds that could be tested
Right.
or broken in times of crisis.
And then we're snapped back to the present.
Back to reality.
Tina's search for this Circle K just becomes even more perilous.
Mm.
I mean, the encounter with Travis and his partner and their just relentless pursuit,
Right.
it really ratchets up the tension.
Yeah, and the ambiguity around Sanda.
Right.
Who is she?
Right. Who is she? And what did she do?
And what did she do to make Tommy so mad?
Right.
It's like a missing piece of the puzzle.
It makes you realize there's this whole backstory we're not seeing.
Right.
A history of conflict and betrayal that we don't know anything about.
Right. Travis's warning that Tommy is going to kill you for what you did
Right.
implies that there are rules and alliances and consequences in this world,
Right.
even in the chaos.
And the fact that they keep calling her Sandra,
Yeah.
it's obvious they've mistaken her for someone else, which could be dangerous or it could be an opportunity.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, can Pina use this,
Right.
to her advantage? And if so, what will she have to do?
And then her escape across the river,
Yes.
using the darkness and the cold to get away.
Right. She's resourceful.
She is, but it's obviously taking its toll on her.
Yeah, the author doesn't let us forget about, the physical toll of this life.
Right.
She's soaked, she's freezing,
Yeah.
she's pushing herself to the limit. It reminds us that survival isn't just about mental strength,
Right.
but also about, physical toughness.
And then that final confrontation with Travis by the riverbank.
Oh, yeah.
And that sudden shift.
I did.
He goes from, chasing her to warning her about Tommy and then just letting her go.
Right.
Almost as mysterious as the man who saved her in the first place.
Yeah. It's a reminder that in this world, things aren't so black and white,
Right.
And people's reasons for doing things are complicated. And who you're allied with can change really fast.
Right. No one is purely good or evil.
Yeah, everyone's just trying to survive.
And then that jeep full of armed men just shows up.
My gosh.
It's danger is around every corner for her.
I know, but it's striking how, Tina's actions are becoming less clear,
Right.
as the story goes on. When she uses fire to escape the Jeep, even though she knows those men will probably die.
Right.
It shows just how desperate she is.
Yeah.
How far she's willing to go to live.
It makes you wonder at what point does survival become, like, morally compromising?
Right.
Where do you draw the line, when the world has gotten so brutal?
Yeah. It's a tough question. And her justifying it in her head,
Right,
her believing that those men wouldn't have had any mercy on her,
right.
it's scary. It shows how this world can change someone's sense of right and wrong.
It raises the question, can you even stay human in a world that's lost its own humanity?
That's a big one.
So as Tina, heads towards this uncertain future, pursued by who knows who,
Right.
haunted by memories, what are we supposed to make of her journey so far?
Well, the author's done a really good job of mixing action and suspense and,
Right.
the psychology of it all. It keeps you on the edge of your seat while making you think about survival and morality and what it means to be human.
Yeah, it feels like Tina's being pulled in like two different directions.
Right.
On the one hand, there's that hope of a better life from this mysterious guy.
Right.
But on the other hand, she's becoming more and more ruthless,
Right. Yeah.
hardened by what she's had to go through.
And what's so interesting is how the author uses Tina's thoughts, her internal monologue,
Yeah.
to explore that tension. We hear like echoes of her parents' voices, their lessons about, responsibility and the consequences of choices.
Right.
It's like she's carrying their ghosts with her,
Right.
trying to make sense of what she's doing compared to the values they taught her.
It makes you wonder if she's going to end up like them or if she can make her own way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings us back to that Circle K. It's not
Right.
just a place to meet. It represents that longing for the past,
Right,
for
yeah.
a simpler time before everything went wrong.
Right.
But can you really go back to that?
Right.
Or is Tina, like, the world around her changed forever?
That's a really good question. And this excerpt ends leaving us with so many things unanswered.
I know.
Will Tina even find this guy at the Circle K?
Right.
What doesn't happen to Sandra? And why is everyone so afraid of her?
Right.
Who is this Tommy? And what kind of power does he have?
The author did a great job of using those unanswered questions to make us feel uneasy,
Yeah.
We're left thinking about what it all means.
Right.
And maybe that's the point, In a world where everything's been stripped away and survival is all that matters, finding answers becomes even more important.
Right. And then there's that final question. What does a better life even mean in this world?
Yeah, is it about being safe or having a community or something even deeper than that?
Right.
The author doesn't give us easy answers. Tina's journey is like our own struggles with fear and hope and making hard choices.
Right.
It makes us think about our own values and what we would be willing to give up for something better.
So if you were Tina, would you trust this man and take a chance on this new life?
Right?
Even if it meant facing danger?
Would you stick with what you know, even if it meant being alone and struggling?
Right. The author leaves us with that powerful image of Tina at a crossroads.
Yes. Her past is fading away and her future is uncertain.
Right.
It reminds us that even in the darkest times, we still have choices to make.
Right.
We can shape our own destiny and search for meaning even in the ruins.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of The Will of the Parthenon.
Yeah, it's a story that makes you think.
It really does. And until next time, keep exploring. A 68